Hello friends, and welcome back to Sunshine and Serenity. My name is Christy Johnson and I am an urban gardener growing in Central Arkansas Zone 7. And today I'm going to teach you 10 easy tips that you can implement into your garden routine to help you grow more food in less space. So if you're ready, come on, let's go. Tip number 1 is to grow vertically. So if you are trying to grow a lot of food in a very small space, utilize growing crops that can grow up trellises or up vertically, and that will give you more space for the things that cannot be grown vertically. This just gives you more space to be able to grow more food in a small area. So things like your pole beans, things like your winter squashes, cucumbers, all of those things, melons even, all of those things can be grown up vertically, and that helps you to save space in your garden beds and be able to plant more in the same area than you would if you were growing everything along the ground. So that's tip number 1, grow up vertically instead of out. Tip number 2 rather, is to utilize growing in containers. So I have a variety of containers that I grow in. I grow in pots, I grow in grow bags, I grow in vertical gardening containers like you see behind me. I also have grown in child swimming pools. I grow in a variety of containers. So this allows you to not only maximize your space, it allows you to utilize all of your space and still grow food. So if you have a empty space lined up against one of your garden boxes, you can line containers along that space and maximize how much food that you can grow. Many foods can be grown in containers. You can grow peppers in containers, lettuces, squashes, zucchinis, tomato plants. You can grow pretty much anything in a container. So definitely utilize containers in addition to garden bed space that you already have. Tip number 3 is to grow closer together and in blocks rather than growing in rows. So as you can see behind me, I have this tomato trellis system that I use for my indeterminate tomatoes. This allows me to prune down my tomatoes to one stem, and I'm able to plant them closer together, which gives me more plants, more yield in a smaller space. This is also true with interplanting, so you can interplant crops together, such as carrots. You can do carrots with a radish in between each carrot, because radishes are quicker to come to production than carrots are. Therefore, by the time the carrots are coming to maturation, you should have already been able to pull those radishes. So then you're utilizing the same space, but you're getting double the production because you are interplanting 2 different vegetables together that will be picked at different times. Also, another great way to do this is to plant in blocks and not rows. And also, if you see the seed spacing on suggestions or recommendations on the back of seed packages, that is a recommendation, and they are taking into consideration a lot of farmers who grow in long rows opposed to in blocks. So you can plant things a lot closer together than what it says on the package, and you will get double the amount of food in the same space. So plant closer together in blocks, interplant many different crops together that will be harvested at different times, so you are maximizing and utilizing the small space to the best of your ability. Tip number 4 is to utilize all of the space that you have and use other vegetables to your benefit. So what I mean by this is, if you are growing, say, pole beans up an arch trellis, like I am here, up this arch trellis, you can actually utilize the shade that those plants provide underneath to plant something else that prefers a little bit of shade, like your cool weather lettuces. Things that will bolt quickly in the heat of the summer can be grown in the shade underneath other vegetables. So if you have tall tomato plants that are creating a lot of shade underneath their canopy, you can actually utilize that space to plant like your lettuces and your spinaches and things that don't mind a little bit of cool and shade in the heat of summer. So that is a good way to maximize the amount of veggies that you grow in the same space. Okay, tip number 5 is succession planting. So what I mean by this is many different types of the same vegetables will come to harvest at different lengths of time. For example, I have corn planted in this bed, and I have 3 different types of corn. So I have an early season corn, which is going to be done around 60 days. Then I have a mid-season corn, which takes about 80 days. And then I have a late season corn, which takes about 100 days. So what I did was I planted these all at the same time, but they will come to harvest at different times. Therefore, I can pull the early corn and utilize this space to put something else in. And as I'm pulling it, I'm able to plant other things in its place. Succession planting can also be done to give you harvest of the same type of veggie at different times. So you're not having to eat it all at the same time. Radishes, for example, you want to succession sow those because you don't want to sow 60 radishes that'll all be ready at the same time, and you have to figure out what to do with 60 radishes. So what you want to do is you want to plant, like say, a week apart your radishes, and that way you'll have radishes to eat each week of the season. So that is a great way to be able to pull a crop, plant something else in its place, or have the same crop harvestable at different times, so you're able to eat and you're able to harvest on that crop a lot longer. Okay, so tip number 6 is to utilize your front garden beds. Now, I'm a little bit of a unique situation because I do have an overhang in our front yard as well as a very large tree. So it's very hard for me to find things that will grow in these beds because a lot of your vegetables need full sun, or at least part sun, to be able to grow and thrive in the right conditions. So these stay shaded pretty much the entire day. But if you have a front yard or a front garden area that is not shaded 90% of the day, you can utilize those beds to grow in. A lot of your herbs and your flowers that can be used for both culinary and medicinal uses are beautiful. I mean, people would walk by and think that they're just another flower in your flower bed. And that is a good way to intercrop things that are both edible, beautiful, and useful on the same space while extending your harvest. Same goes for lettuces. There are many different lettuces that are just beautiful to look at, and if you put those in a front flower bed, people are just going to think that it's a beautiful ornamental, but what they don't know is that you can actually eat those as well. So double your space by utilizing the front and the back garden spaces that you have. Okay, so tip number 7 is to grow microgreens. So what I mean by that is a lot of your lettuces and spinaches, your well, not necessarily kales, but more your lettuces, your spinaches, your Swiss chards, those things, your bok choys, all those things can be picked as baby greens. So what you can do is, instead of growing a lettuce for a heading lettuce, you can actually grow them for baby greens. So that allows you to thickly sow lettuce, spinach closer together, and all of those will come up and you can use them as cut and come again lettuces. So that allows you to grow a pretty substantial amount of baby greens and salad greens in a smaller space, and it allows you to get a ton of harvest in the same space as you would a heading lettuce. Because if you think about it, heading lettuces need a lot more space in order for them to head up. But if you're just growing for baby greens, you can sow a ton of lettuces super close together, pick them all season long for fresh eating salads. Okay, so tip number 8 is to grow seasonally. Now, what I mean by that is a lot of people focus on the spring and summer garden, right? And everybody's so excited about growing a garden in the spring and the summer. And a lot of people forget that you can grow a garden in the fall and winter as well, especially depending on where you live. The more southernly you live, in like zone 7, 8, 9, 10, you can grow a lot more over a longer season, because We here in Zone 7 have a very pretty long growing season from about April, May, all the way to about October, November in some cases. And so a lot of people forget that you can succession sow spring and summer plants, but that you can also plant a fall garden. And if you have a small urban space like I do, you have to plant seasonally. Now, what I mean by that is I spend a lot of my focus in the spring and summertime on spring and summer crops because I need to utilize all the space that I can in order to grow the amount of spring and summer foods that our family eats. Much the same is in the fall and winter garden. That's when I focus more on the fall and winter crops, like your lettuces, your spinaches, your kales, broccoli, cauliflower, those type of crops. I don't grow those so much in the spring because I don't really have a lot of space to utilize for those things, because those things would still be growing when I have to get a lot of my spring and summer crops planted. So in order to maximize the space that I have, I plant seasonally. So I plant my spring and summer stuff in the spring and summer, and I plant the fall and winter crops in the fall and winter time. And what I do is I plant enough of those things to be able to can and preserve and last our family until the next season comes around that those things are planted again. So by the time we are done eating on salads and greens and stuff, we are ready for some spring and summer crops. Now, if you have a larger space, you can plant both the cool weather and the warm weather stuff in your same space. I just don't have that much space here in the urban setting that I can utilize for that. But don't forget about the fall and winter garden. Okay, so tip number 9 is to plant perennials or plants that will self-seed. Now this is super helpful for your next year gardening. So as you can see behind me right here, I have a borage plant that I interplanted some borage plants in with my strawberries in my container kiddie pool, which we already talked about in one of the steps. But these self-seeded and they came back again this year. So I did not have to re-sow those, and the bees love them and it helps bring them to my garden. I also have 2 beds that are dedicated to a lot of perennial herbs and flowers that will come back again next year. So not only will it save you work because you don't have to worry about planting it again next year, a lot of the times you will have volunteer plants just come up in your garden year after year of tomatoes or sunflowers, or and those volunteers are free plants. So that allows you to not have to plant as many plants. It's like I said, it's free food basically, and those perennial plants that'll come back year after year will allow you to have a harvest over and over and over again and a lot less effort. And the same can be said about establishing vegetables that will come back again year after year. Asparagus beds take 3 years to establish, but after that you have an unlimited amount of food that comes from that one bed, so you will never have to plant it ever again. So utilize those perennial plants and get them in your garden. And the 10th and final tip that I can give you is to have a plan and utilize all of your space. So I have a highly diverse garden. I grow and interplant a lot of different plants together with flowers and herbs and those things, so that I am able to utilize my space well, have no empty space, and be able to grow more food. Not only does this create a diverse garden and bring a lot of beneficial pollinators and insects to your garden, it is able to utilize all of your space well, because there's nothing more frustrating than when you go and plant your garden and then you go to look at that garden, several months into the growing season, and you notice that there are empty spaces that you could have used to produce and grow more food. So definitely have a plan. Figure out where you want to plant what plants, and then plant those things closer together to utilize your space more. And then just by using these 10 simple tips that I gave you, it will allow you to maximize your growing space, especially if you are growing in a smaller garden setting, in an urban setting like I am, and you don't have a lot of space to work with. It is so important to utilize the space that you do have and to steward those resources well, that you are able to grow a lot of food in a small space. Because trust me, it is possible. If you utilize all these tips that I gave you and you grow in a ton of different ways, you can grow a ton of food in a small space. And that's what it's all about, guys, is growing food for your family, being able to be more self-sustainable. Even when you don't live on a huge farm, you can still do it in the city. And I am showing you exactly how it is possible, even if you are in a waiting phase of your life and you are in an urban setting, but you dream to have more. It is possible to still do it while you are in a temporary space. So thanks for watching, you guys. If you liked it, hit that like and subscribe button. It helps our channel grow. I appreciate each and every one of y'all. If you will drop me a comment below, let me know if you're utilizing any of these tips. If you have other tips that you can suggest that will help people that are watching this that may be growing for the first time, or they didn't know that they could grow in an urban setting, or even people that have been growing for a long time, we can all learn and grow from each other. But thanks for watching. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week. And until next time, friends, I will see y'all later. Bye.